Hello, welcome to our SURE symposium, our SURE seminar for today. So SURE is Student Undergraduate Research Experience at the University of Saskatchewan. My name is Merle Massey. I'm the coordinator of undergraduate research here at USask. And today we have a panel of esteemed senior editors from USURJ. USURJ is the University of Saskatchewan Undergraduate Research Journal. Their job and what they do all the time is to take undergraduate student research and make it clean, make it pretty, and publish it for the public. And this is our open access journal that we have here at the University of Saskatchewan. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Delane, who's going to be our point person and introduce everyone else. Delane, over to you.
All right, thank you, Merle. I'm Delane. I am one of the editors-in-chief of USURJ this year. What I'm going to ask for each of the other senior editors, as well as my fellow editor-in-chief, is for each of us to do maybe a little introduction of who we are and why we joined USURJ in the first place. For myself, this is my third year with USURJ. My first 2 years, I was the senior editor of the Humanities and Fine Arts section. I have an English degree, and I'm currently a master's student of the Masters of Fine Arts Creative Writing course at USask. And I originally joined the journal because I wanted to see if there were some ways to incorporate the things I'd been learning in my English degree into like real world applicable situations. I'm going to pass it off to Jordan next.
Hello, my name is Jordan. I'm the undergraduate editor-in-chief, so the editor-in-chief along with Delane. I've been with USURJ for 3 years now. I started out as an associate editor with the social sciences section of the journal, and then I moved on to senior editor, and now I'm the undergraduate editor-in-chief. So what attracted me to the journal, first off, was I wanted to learn more about open access publishing. And I thought, well, I could read articles and I could watch videos on it, but the way that I learn best is hands-on. So that's why I became involved. And I guess I can pass the baton off to Brooke.
Sure. My name is Brooke. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fourth-year crop science student. I'm also involved with the PAL Peer Mentor program. So if you've taken a Bio 120 study session, I might have seen you there. This is my second year of being involved with USURJ. I'm currently the senior editor for natural sciences. I first got involved with it because I love doing research. I really love every aspect of it. And so I wanted to see kind of the publishing side of things. And then when I got involved with that, I learned that I love editing papers and reading papers even more than I love writing them myself. So that's why I've stuck around. Maybe Brennan, do you want to go next?
Why not? Thank you, Brooke. Hi, I'm Brennan Smith. I am presently the senior editor for the social sciences. I've been with the journal Research for 2 years. I was previously an associate editor. What attracted me to this journal and this position in particular was that in a previous life, I was the assistant to the editor for the Journal of the History of the Neurosciences, and it was very much just with academics, and I'm very passionate about supporting student success and student research, and so like what could be more perfect than USURJ, and that's what I found, that it's an incredibly wonderful experience for me as an editor, and hopefully for the students with whom I get to interact. That's just my hope. I'm a hopeful person. I'm a 2.5-year psychology student, I think, because of all the things that COVID screwed up, it screwed up my summer learning. So I'm like in between period, but that's just me. I'm going to mute myself because I talk too much and hand things over to the next person on my screen, who's Courtney.
Okay, I think you said Courtney, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'll go. But yeah, so I'm Courtney, clearly, and this is my second year with USURJ. So I started out as an associate editor, so that was with the social sciences section. And this year I kind of came back. I'm still in that role, but I'm also helping out as like a senior editor for layout section. And I kind of started here somewhat curiously and somewhat selfishly, because in sociology, I didn't have a whole bunch of opportunities to collaborate with other students. So I kind of liked the idea of, learning more about the publishing process, but also kind of learning from other people also. So I think that's kind of my contribution for that part. And I don't know who would be next, so I'll just kind of let somebody else go after me.
Let's say, how about May, you go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm May. I'm a fourth year English honors student. I have been with the journal. This is my second year now. I'm the senior editor of the Humanities and Fine Arts section. Last year, I began as an associate editor. And I joined the journal because as an English major, I really wanted to I thought about pursuing like editing and publishing after my degree. And so I figured I'd get a little jump start on that with USURJ. So I'll pass it off to lastly, Tim.
Thank you. Yep, I am Tim. I am a fourth year physiology and pharmacology student. This is actually my first year with the journal, so I'm still brand new. I am the senior editor of the health sciences section. And I think my reasons for originally joining are really similar to Brooke's. I really enjoyed the summer research that I've done and wanted to learn more about the publishing side of it, as well as perhaps improving my own editing and writing skills. So I guess with that, I'll pass it back to Delane.
Yeah, for sure. So today we've prepared a couple questions that we want to kind of go over, some questions that students are often wondering about. But of course, you are also welcome to post your own questions within the chat if anything comes up. And I'll have Jordan looking at the chat. So, and then she'll kind of let me know when they come up, and then we can tackle those as well. So the first question that we were going to talk about is, what is publishing and why should an undergraduate student consider it? And I think I'm first going to call on Tim to give us a little answer there.
Sure. I think that a publication, like at its most basic form, is a form of communication, but a formal communication. And the part that makes it formal is that it undergoes a process called peer review, where experts in the field related to the submission evaluate it for, I guess, its validity and provide feedback to improve it. And the second part of the question, why should undergraduates consider publishing, is I think it teaches I'm going to make this comment specific to the sciences, but it really teaches a lesson in how scientific progress is made, like how science works. And then second to that, it is really conducive to critically thinking about work that you've done. I guess I'll pass it back to Delane with that.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. That's awesome. Do our other editors want to chime in there as well with potentially some other ways that an undergraduate student might consider it for the field that you're in?
Sure, I can speak a little bit more on that. I would say one reason to publish in USURJ over other journals is that we are an open access journal, meaning that there is no paywall to accessing our journal, and we promote the ideals of open science. We are listed in the directory of open access journals, so that's kind of a good guideline to how you know if a journal is legit or not. And so if you're really wanting to disseminate your research in a way that is accessible to a wide range of people, then this is a really great avenue for that.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke. A further note on the Directory of Open Access, DoAJ for short. It's one of those things where when you're looking to publish your own research, it's one of the places that you would look to find journals that you know have been, that are at like a certain level of quality. That's not to say there aren't potentially predatory journals within that list, but it is like quality controlled, and they're all open access, meaning that they all like have like no paywall for readers to find that information, which also means that other people are more able to actually read your research because they don't have to pay a bunch of money to one of those big journals that has like a huge amount of paywalls. And like when your library is you have like those we have like a lot that we're subscribed to, but occasionally there comes like there's just so many that we can't subscribe to all of them, and that happens with a lot of universities as well. So those additional paywalls kind of block that information from getting out there. But yeah, like Brooke said, we're kind of in support of that open access and open information movement. So would any of the other senior editors or Jordan want to speak on anything about that?
I'll just mention that I popped the link to the DoAJ website. So if you are interested, you can take a look on your own time too for more information.
Thank you. Okay, so then if we're going down to the next question, that is, what does the process look like to publish something with USURJ, and how long does it take? So I'm going to first turn it over to Brennan to give us a bit of information on that.
Sure. So from a technical perspective, what it looks like, I think Merle has popped the USURJ link there in the chat. It's very, well, it seems and is to us very seamless to actually submit something to us. You just make a very easy to make account. There's a bunch of very easy to follow prompts, and we have training videos about how to do all that sort of thing. But it's a quite simple process of like, you have to sign a publication agreement with us, which basically says we are okay to publish this. And there is, I want to talk about this. I didn't talk about this in the previous meeting, but I want to talk about it now. There's a copyright agreement. We're under Creative Commons. So what that means is you can retain certain levels of control on your published work, your research. You can't retain rights all the way to say what we might consider like an all rights restricted thing, because we are under Creative Commons. We're an open access journal. That means people want to see your work and you want them to see it. That also means that with the exception of the most restrictive license, which you can opt into and can provide for your work, that someone can basically take your work and present it elsewhere. They have to cite you, they have to give you credit, and if they want to alter it at all, they have to get your permission. But that is something that if you were under all rights reserved, which really, we can talk to a lawyer if we need to, but it doesn't really exist in the sense that's most understood. But that's something you have to fill out, and often we'll get to a question about stumbling blocks. That's often one of the initial stumbling blocks, that you haven't filled out the publication agreement, or you haven't filled it out correctly, and then we have to send it back to you to fill it out. But like that sort of thing is, again, very easy. The process that goes from there is we, the editors, look at your work. We see if there's anything that might need to be adjusted or revised before it goes off to a reviewer. We would then communicate that with you, and we're all very, very friendly. And I promise everyone else on the journal is much more concise when they send emails, so it won't take you all day to read through it. But we get back to you with very supportive and needed feedback. You do that, you then go on to what's called the review stage, where we find an expert in the field who is 99 times out of 100 has a PhD, is well respected and renowned, but at that level where they will be the expert in the field who will be giving you very strong and important feedback to make your submission better. Comes back, we give that to you, you take care of it. It then goes on to what we would call the copy editing stage, where I'm presuming you've done the revisions and they're all up to snuff. There was the possibility that we would have to go through another round of review, but that's more rare than not. Copy editing is we make your paper look as strong and as good as a professional as it can. At that point, you have to do that. We tell you what needs to be done. Then it goes on to production, which is the layout part, which that would be any questions you ever have about that, you direct to Courtney, who on my screen is down there. I don't know where she might be on your screen, but that's it. Once that happens, there's a time window. It's 48 hours, but you don't really need to worry about that today, probably. Then it goes on to being published, and it will be in a big, beautiful journal that is professional, and you can show your friends and family and the world, and it's great. And with that, I will hand it, I think, to Brooke.
Yeah, I think you covered that really well. Thank you, Brennan. I just wanted to note that I popped a link into the chat there that it's just a video with step-by-step instructions on how to submit. And I think Jordan said that she was going to compile all these links to make it a little bit easier to find. But I just wanted to touch real quick on what the basic criteria are for submission. Essentially, it has to be work that is original research, and it has to be student in the last 2 years. So if you've graduated already, that's fine as long as it was completed within the last 2 years during your undergraduate studies at USask. And one of the stumbling blocks that students run into is they think that they can't submit because maybe the results they found weren't significant, or they didn't quite get the outcome that they were expecting, or maybe their research isn't fully realized. Maybe they weren't able to complete their research project. That's okay. We would still encourage you to submit. And one of the big movements in open science right now is publishing failed results, publishing results that are insignificant, maybe they're uninteresting. So if you have completed research with those kind of insignificant or unfinished results, we still encourage you to submit to USURJ. And I think that's all I have on that.
Yeah, thank you both. You guys touched on a lot of great stuff there. I just want to give a brief kind of summary of some of the key points to draw away from both of the things Brennan and Brooke are saying. So yeah, when you're submitting to USURJ, while we are looking for original work, as Brooke mentioned, we also will take things that, have like insignificant result. We are mainly here to also help you learn about the publishing process itself. One of our main goals is to help students and help student learning. So that's one of the things that we're really passionate about with USURJ. So one of the things that I also want to go over again is just like a couple of those overview steps in the publishing process. So as Brennan mentioned, first you do have to sign a publication agreement, which is a bit of legalese in a way. But if you have any questions, you can definitely ask us about it. And then, once it's submitted, we take an initial look to make sure it meets all of the initial submission requirements, which can also be found on our website. And after that, the editorial team within that section will send it off to a reviewer, as Brennan noted. And for the question, the second half of that question, for how long the time period takes to have something published, a lot of that has to do with the availability of the reviewers, as well as your own availability too. So sometimes finding a reviewer, depending on the subject you're discussing in your article, it can be a little bit difficult if it's a very niche topic. So sometimes it can be difficult to find a reviewer right away. And then the reviewers, they're also busy, usually busy profs or graduate students or faculty at the university. So those reviewers, sometimes they're just like a little bit too busy with a lot on their plate. So it can take a bit longer than we anticipate. But after they get back to us with that, as Brennan mentioned, we send those comments along with some of our own feedback back to you. And then that's your opportunity to take that feedback and criticism and adjust and tweak your paper to respond back to those critiques. And then after that, like there might be a couple more rounds. There might be like one more round of review if we believe that the paper still needs it, which honestly, I'm like, that would be like super lucky because then you get so much extra feedback and so much extra knowledge. But regardless, then we also will help you getting it into the copy editing stage, looking for grammar and style and paragraphing structure things there to just make it, as Brennan said, like the best, most professional. I like how you put that. So, and then, then it gets to the layout section, which maybe in a minute we'll come back to Courtney to kind of give a bit more on that, but I also wanted to see if any of the other senior editors wanted to touch on that question. Okay, I'll throw it then to Courtney to talk about the layout section and how that works as well.
For sure. Yeah, I got it off mute. That's a good start. I was going to add to that. Sometimes in the process, we kind of, I don't remember someone mentioned this. We might tag in with the Writing Center, like ask them to kind of get involved.
Yes.
And they offer great advice too. And I think it's a little, not everyone uses it, but it's a really great thing to kind of check out also. And then, yeah, with layout, that's more towards the end of things. So that's pretty much once you've done all of your revisions that are necessary and you've kind of formatted it. And so it's kind of all ready to go. So the author's kind of confident at that stage that they're good with what stage that it's at. But yeah, there's nothing too much to say about that because it really does kind of happen pretty quick once we send it back to the author. And then they kind of get to review it. And yeah, I believe it was about 24 hours, but maybe it's a little longer that they have to review. But
I believe it is 48. Yeah.
48? Awesome. Yeah, it depends on the author too. Normally it's kind of ready to go at that point. So there's not too much to touch up. But yeah, I think that's kind of the overview.
For that 48 hours too, the main reason behind it, as Courtney said, like you've already done, like approved the copy edits at that stage. So the paper's usually almost like ready to go. It's only minor tweaks at that point. So like you might be like, oh, there was a little spelling mistake. Can you quickly fix that? And then we'll go in and fix that within the layout. But usually at that point, it's like we're basically ready to publish. I'd also maybe like to show you what that looks like for one of our current papers, just so you have an idea of what the PDF looks like. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. So right now, we're actually waiting on our next, what do you call it, cover page for our current issue, but we have 2 already published. So this is actually one that Courtney already worked on layout. So if you go to the PDF, we have the full article. So they all kind of take this same kind of outline. So the title at the top with the author's name, abstract, keywords. This one had a quote at the beginning to kind of contextualize the topic, which I really wanted centered, so I kept bugging Courtney about it. I was like, I want the quote like this and this. So, and then, yeah, all the content, footnotes. And it looks different based on different types of citation styles as well, but this is kind of the general idea of what it will look like. And you can take a look at that at any time on our website. And I will stop sharing for now. Yeah, and Jordan also linked the Writing Center link in the chat there as well. And you can also email leave.markin@usask.ca, which we can type in the chat as well. And that's your main contact for the Writing Center if you have any questions about that. But usually for USURJ, we will be kind of the liaison between you and the Writing Center, and we can like help you find a tutor that would best fit the subject that your article falls in. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to add on this topic of why publish with, or sorry, it's what does the process look like to publish and how long does it take? I might add one more note because I feel like I wasn't super specific for the how long does it take. So that also can be like months is like what we were talking about with like the review process. So it's not like a 1 month situation usually, unless sometimes we get really lucky and the reviewer is like free and ready to go and they complete the review really fast. But even then, usually For the students as well, like it can be time consuming to make these adjustments and revisions, and that's why we're always here to help you. But it can take like quite a few months to actually get it finished. We don't have an exact period of how many months because it depends case by case, but just know that when you are applying or submitting your paper, that it's not like a super quick one and done, like you're published it like in a week. So it is a bit of a process. And with that, I'll move on to our next question we have here, which is, what skill sets or experiences does a student learn during the publishing process that they don't learn in class or a lab? And I think Mame has an answer for this one.
Yeah, I do. So to begin with, I think that if you don't within like your normal classes, like I know with English as an English major, I did learn like general writing skills in my first year courses, but that might be not be the case for like science classes. So you will learn your general writing skills and what a really good paper, what your best paper looks like, because we like to make sure that like the paper that you publish is the best paper that we think that you can publish. Along with that, we've mentioned feedback quite a few times, and you get a lot of feedback from our reviewers. Our reviewers are really good about that. And so you get more feedback than you normally would from professors in class, I think, and you really learn how to incorporate that feedback because we're with you every step of the way and making sure that you have addressed all the feedback that the reviewers have given you and that it all makes sense to you. As a final point, not only is USURJ like the most supportive environment to publish for your first time, but it's also just like the best place to learn how to publish and to learn about publishing, which is definitely something that I don't think many classes touch on.
Yeah, thank you so much, May. Would anyone else like to touch on that point? Maybe also directed towards like your own field? I will also mention Brooke just had to take off to another commitment, but we thank her for coming in and sharing some time with us. So, yeah.
I'd like to touch on sort of what May detailed and kind of circle it back to the why publish with USURJ, why publish at all.
Go for it.
Thank you. So undergrads, typically when they're looking at publishing, they're thinking it would look good when you're applying to grad school. And that's very, very true. It doesn't matter what field you're in. If you are applying to any grad school and you can say on your letter of intent or whatever, you might have to put in that I have publication. I have a publication in a peer-reviewed journal. That will put you ahead of anyone else who's applying who doesn't have that. That's a good key strength to have. I would, if you're looking at this from a purely utilitarian standpoint, and let's say you're not going to apply to grad school, you're going to go into the job market. I've been in like the private and the nonprofit sector. Any job you're applying to where you have a publication in the field that you're studying is also going to, at the very least, be something interesting on your resume that when you are in that interview and they will ask you, so you published in this field, like what was that like? And you can speak to all the strengths and all the traits that May listed, that those things that you learned, and you can say, like, I was patient, I learned how to take criticism or take direction, I learned how to collaborate, I learned the importance of persistence, I learned the importance of thinking on my feet, I learned how to see something that I might not have been that familiar with through a defined process that I had to work hard to do. It is in no way, shape, or form anything but a benefit to you, because the worst thing that happens, like absolute worst thing that will happen if you submit your work to USURJ, is that you will come out with a stronger paper and a better understanding of how to write a better paper. So that's just to tack on to what May said, what I wanted to sneak in.
Thank you, Brennan. Yeah, exactly. Like the things that you'll learn while publishing and going through the publishing process can definitely be applied outside of just academia as well. Especially like receiving that feedback. In a way, like just learning how to receive feedback is a really important skill in any kind of job. And if you are going into the academic field, it can also prepare you really well for your graduate studies. which like when you're at that level 2, you might be considering publishing again for your graduate work, as well as it gives you more of an idea of how to look at your own work in a larger context of academia itself. So, for example, in your class, you're learning about very specific things in this field, though, and you might be getting a pretty good overview of the things in that field, but maybe the reviewer we've had it before that they've recommended additional text for the student to read, which would give them an even greater understanding of the topics that they're discussing in their paper. So in that way as well, not only are you learning how to make it better from just like a written standpoint, but also how to find even further research in the field that you're interested in. As well, I'll also mention that when applying for things like bursaries and awards and grants even, a lot of the time those panels like to see that you know how to situate your own work within a broader context, which I believe the publishing process really helps you think about, especially because we require you to write an abstract about your work and think about ways to summarize and then contextualize it within the field. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I'll kind of add something to that, I guess. It also kind of helps students with their confidence and motivation, like going through this process, because there's so many steps to it that like we really are there to offer support. So, you know, students, again, learn more about their own work. And so they kind of, yeah, it can even help them with their decision whether they want to go into further studies, or, you know, as they're making that decision, you can go, ah, this is for me, or ah, no, I'm going to go this other way. So it can be confidence for that too, right? Where you're just learning a bit more and get that practical experience. That doesn't hurt.
Definitely. For sure, like in academia, like a big part of it, as you know, with professors, like a big part of their job is sending their work to journals and having publications come out regularly. So trying to see, like, dip your toes into publishing through submitting to USURJ is definitely a good way to also dip your toes into whether that's something you're interested in doing in the future as well. So totally. Thanks, Courtney. Alrighty. Then we'll also go to our next question, which is, as Brennan hinted to earlier, what are the biggest stumbling blocks along the way for a student to get through the publishing process? So does anyone want to take the first stab at that question? Haven't heard from Tim in a while, so maybe I'll pick on him.
Sure, no problem. I think a big stumbling block for me when I'm writing, and I think this applies to a lot of people who submit with USURJ, is figuring out where to start with feedback that you get. Like, I submitted this piece, and there are these changes that a reviewer or the editorial board has recommended. How do I start to actually make those changes? And I think at this point, maybe I will re-shout out the Writing Center, that can be a really good place, whether it's through USURJ or just in other writing, to figure out what that first step is, and they're very supportive. I mean, along with our team.
Yeah, definitely. Like, also, if you have any questions about the feedback, we're more than happy to help you with that. Even like in like a WebEx meeting format, if you need to like talk about the changes particularly. We know that sometimes it can feel like we're just robots in an email machine that just send you things, but we're there and we're like all eager to like actually like help and get to know the authors as well. Unlike the reviewer, who is it's a blind peer review, so the reviewer doesn't know the author doesn't know the reviewer. But for us, kind of the middleman, we're like more than happy to help you implement those changes that the reviewer has requested. So we can definitely answer any questions you have and help you along the way. Anyone else want to jump in right now? I know Brennan has an answer if he maybe wants to touch on part of what he was talking about earlier.
Sure, I touched on so many things. I don't. So a few of the stumbling blocks that you might student people encounter in the publishing process is it can sometimes take a long time. We've talked about this to find a reviewer. And just to give you some context as to how that works, our priority or where we go first for a reviewer is within the University of Saskatchewan, because typically most students are writing papers that there is someone here who is an expert in the field and who we know and have a relationship with that we can trust to give good, insightful, helpful feedback in a timely fashion. Now, timely fashion, that's, wobbly because everyone has a life, everyone has priorities, everyone has things they have to get done, and asking a busy professor to do an extra review of something is extra work for them. It can take more time, it can take less time. But there are cases, and I've had this happen, I think, twice, where a student writes a paper that it's very good, it's very interesting, but it's also novel in that it's on a topic that there isn't an expert within the U of S structure at all. So in that point, we have to go, and we do go outside of the bounds of USask. Now you can imagine that takes additional time because we don't have that same relationship, that same familiarity with a professor at, say, U of T. The furthest out I've gone has been a university in Shanghai for a reviewer that we were lucky enough to connect through a relationship at the U of S. But that was how far we had to go to find an expert in the field to get that student insightful, useful, correct advice to make their paper better. And that professor was very responsive once we had the contact, but that's the level of commitment we had to find you a reviewer. But again, you can imagine to go from inside the U of S to a little bit outside to all the way to China to make that relationship, to build it, to then get the review, it can take time. So that's one stumbling block that can happen. There's also the stumbling block that you, the student, have a life. You have things going on, especially online learning, there are a lot of different stresses, and we are never here to cause you a mental health drain or a mental health strain. We're here to be supportive and help you through this. So we do at some point set this is the deadline we want this back by, but it's never a get it back to us by then or we're done with your publication. It's the stumbling block there would be you have a bunch of midterms and you're not going to get it back. So that means it might delay us because everyone who works on USURJ is also a student too. So keep in mind that when you submit something, sometimes I might have midterms that I need to study for them. So I'm not going to respond to you the same day. It might be that I have 3 papers going on and Courtney has 4 papers going on. And so the process kind of slows down there. But typically we are very quick to respond and quick to get your stuff. But there are those sort of feedbacks that basically sometimes you don't think about that are just life-related things. And that's a stumbling block just to keep in mind that we are always attentive and looking after it. And even over the summer, this isn't the case with every single team, but over the summer, the social science team, we kept having meetings just because we really love to support student publication. Only reason we love to do it. We kept meeting, we kept helping authors throughout the summer. That's the sort of the level of commitment. But again, you have a life, you have things that come up. So those are the basic stumbling blocks I would touch on in a weird hot potato fashion.
Thanks, Brennan. Yeah, so for what Brennan was talking about too with getting the revisions from you back to us, like he said, that can be something that can be time consuming for you as well, since sometimes you're rehauling a lot of your paper. So we understand completely that takes a while. And we will sometimes be oh, can you get that back to us by this date? But of course, too, if you don't, like Brennan said, we're not going to throw it out. We do have archives that if you're, for the time being, not willing or sorry, not willing, but not able to finish the edits and suggestions, then we can archive the paper and you can let us know when you're able and you have that extra time to work on the paper, and it's not going to go anywhere. We'll still have it in our database. But that also just means that if you're really you don't have time and you won't for the foreseeable future, it's so that we're not continuously emailing you every month or two to and bothering you when that you don't have the time. So stuff like that can be stumbling blocks, and that can be where also some papers will get a little bit stuck just in that post-review point where the author's unsure even if they want to do the reviews, if it's too much of a time commitment for them. But we hope, and we've also heard from students that even if they're not willing to go that extra mile to finish those revisions, they usually find them still quite helpful and beneficial just to have them there and to think about them and learn from them. And a lot of students too, like when they do graduate, that sometimes can be when they're like, okay, now I want to go back to that paper and work on it now that I'm not dying in midterms. And you do have, I believe Brooke mentioned it earlier, it's a 2-year post-graduation time frame where you're able to submit a paper that you worked on in your undergrad. So, any other stumbling blocks that anyone can think of from the panel? Okay, then let's go on to our next question is, what was your own publishing experience like and what might you do differently? So, funny enough, not all of us on the senior editorial board have actually like gone through the publishing process for ourselves. I actually just recently submitted my own work, so it is a little bit weird to have been with USURJ for a while and now see on the other side as an author, what does this look like? How much information are you given? What can you see on the OJS interface? Because it is quite different from what the editors can see. But I'm going to pass this off to Jordan because she has actually already published something with USURJ.
Sure. So the first paper that I'd published with USURJ, I submitted at the end of my first year studying actually at the university. And the reason I submitted, I mean, one barrier I sort of experienced was thinking, oh, well, this work isn't good enough. It's not of publishable quality. But my professor was very encouraging and had tapped a few of us students on the shoulder and said, you know, there's this awesome opportunity through the university. You can have your work published in a student journal. It's open access. And she kind of outlined all the benefits. So I was very grateful for her kind of encouragement. And so I submitted my paper. And that was sort of at the end of the semester of the second term of that first year. So I was sort of lucky wherein I got to work on the revisions over the summer when I didn't have a lot on my plate. But the first kind of step was the editors that were assigned to my submission gave me feedback right off the bat. So I worked on that and then sent my submission back in with the revisions that I had done following the editor's feedback. And then the editors had taken about 2 to 3 weeks to find a peer reviewer. And then the peer reviewers' comments were absolutely amazing. I mean, they went through every sentence of my paper and like commented on every single one. So whether to say this chunk is really good and this is why, or to say this chunk could be improved or remove this. They also gave me like extra resources to look into to further my knowledge on the topic. And it was absolutely incredible. So I think the revisions took me about a month all up with what the peer reviewer had given to me to work with. And then I sent it back in and the editors, I think, yeah, then it went on to copy editing. So then it was sort of revising the little nitpicky things like spelling and grammar and sentence structure and those types of things. And that probably took only a day or two. And then once we had like a solid product, the layout members of the team worked on formatting my paper so that it looked like the publications. When you go on our website and you read the published publications, it looked all fancy. And then I had to give my stamp of approval and then it was published. So that was kind of my experience. I mean, since then, I have strengthened my paper writing skills, and I would say that's probably my strongest skill within school. So I think it was really beneficial for me to do that right off the bat in my first year, because then I started out with like a strong foundation for the rest of my undergraduate studies. So
thank you so much, Jordan. Yeah, I also think that it's great to do it like as early as possible, like dip your toes in like early on. And like Jordan said, a lot of people do find that one of the biggest things that stops them from submitting is that they don't feel like the work is currently at a level that can be published. But the truth is, nothing is ever right away like at a level where it can be published. Everything needs improvements. And so you shouldn't let that stop you from applying or submitting to USURJ, because really like what we're here for is to help you learn what a publishable paper does look like and to help you get your paper from the initial starting point to a publishable form.
Yeah.
So
I just want to add on to that, Delane.
yeah.
The first paper that I'd published with USURJ, the paper that I had submitted looked completely different than the paper that was published. So even if you're like, oh, I don't feel confident in my skills, I don't think this is of the best quality for being published. Like Delane said, we give lots of feedback, lots of guidance, and there's so much room for improvement and growth. So it's not necessarily the paper that you're submitting that will be published. It'll be like, that will be the main like theme or thread, but we will like improve it and polish it and make it more professional and the best version that it could be, given your sort of original thought behind it. So
Yeah, definitely. That also sparked me to think a little bit more too about another question we often get in like when we're talking to students is, okay, but why USURJ? Like, why should I submit to USURJ in particular? And it really is because of that level of feedback and attention that we give your paper. And we are open access too, so that's a great thing that we talked about earlier. But to me, one of the things that that USURJ does that's quite different from maybe how some other papers will do things is that level of feedback that we will give you, because the editorial team will give you a lot of the feedback in addition to the reviewer. And our goals are to help you learn about the publishing process, not to like it is to like get you to like a final product, but we also don't publish every paper that we receive. So and as an undergraduate journal, like our primary motivation is to help students learn. So because of that, it's a very different vibe, I guess you might say, when you're submitting to USURJ, and it really is like a practicing ground for further publications.
yeah, like we focus on maybe the process more so, whereas if you were to submit to another academic journal, their focus might be more on the end product. So yeah.
Like what Brooke said earlier too, like some papers might not publish things that don't have a significant result, whereas we would, because, for example, we have the research snapshots, which are kind of designed to showcase student work rather than like significant results necessarily. And we can throw a little link to the research snapshot in the chat as well. And we can talk about that a bit more at the end too, but it looks like we got a question.
Yeah, so Merle's asking, where do the papers typically come from? Is it from summer research experiences, something from a class, elsewhere?
Awesome. I guess I'll go through like each section to kind of ask you, where do you see your papers come from most often? And I suppose Courtney and Brennan are from the same section, social sciences, so they can like tag team together. Maybe first then I'll comment on natural sciences since Brooke's not here. I'm not someone from the natural sciences myself, so it's a little bit hard for me to fully answer that, but it seems like usually they come from the higher level courses where they have like a research component where they're doing more experiments and write-ups along with that. But we also will get papers from other levels that have like a research component, including FIRE classes, like first year research experience classes. So who wants to go next? Maybe May, you haven't talked in a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so with the humanities and fine arts, a lot of what we get is from classes, a lot of English papers for sure. So yeah, mostly classes. We did have one recently that was kind of an experience paper, and it was about the English program's career internship. so it was an experience paper about the career internship that they had, and it was actually a really insightful paper that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I would say mostly from within classes. Definitely for outside of English, probably higher level classes. Since I'm not sure that a lot of humanities have like first year paper components in all of the humanities stuff, but English for sure we do get from, it could be anywhere from, like Delane said, that fire project to a 400 level paper, which is great.
I would add on too that the other one in humanities that we tend to get a lot from is philosophy, since they usually start writing papers quite early as well. We've been lacking a little bit in history and CMRS papers, which is unfortunate, but we're working on getting the word out there more to those students.
We did just get an archaeology one, which is really interesting. I don't think in my time we've ever had an archaeology paper, so that's cool.
Yeah, so we also like the anthropology and archaeology papers would usually fall somewhere between probably social science or humanities. Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, I think that archaeology and anthropology both fall under social sciences. Usually.
Unless it's like very specific.
I believe it's like an art. It's like arts, archaeology. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. It's very like blending, hey?
Exactly, yeah.
I will mention on that point too that we do have interdisciplinary as a section in our journal, which we no longer have as its own section to work on its own. We have like we cooperate between the senior editors and editors of the sections to work on things that fall in between different areas. So like May said, that was like an art-based archaeology paper, but usually the archaeology or anthropology, because they have a social connotation, those will usually go to the social sciences. Unless they're using it for some reason for like a natural science situation, and then it might go to Brooke. So it really depends too on where it fits, and also if you submit it to the wrong section, we'll figure it out and we'll move it to where we think it fits best. So yeah, my brain kind of went all over the place. Tim.
Sure. And I think what I have to say really echoes, it's very similar to the natural sciences. I think there's probably three main feeders that we have. The first is upper level courses that either have a research or writing component. We publish review articles. So if there's a term paper for a 400 level class, then that's completely eligible for publication. The second, as I briefly alluded to, would be like a research-based course. And the third is, summer experience, like summer research projects, really similar to the SURE program. It fits in really nicely. And those could either be submitted in a research article form, or if you're talking more about your research experiment or experience and the methods that you used, then that could be submitted in a research snapshot form.
Yeah, awesome. So then it looks like we're getting close to the time period. So I'll give like Brennan and Courtney the last couple minutes to talk about their sections, where the papers usually come from, and then we can tackle any last minute questions at the end.
Okay. Yeah, like I guess I would kind of preface our answer with just because it's the most common source that we get our articles, it doesn't mean, oh, that means I can't submit because they didn't reference the specific context that my paper falls under. So I guess take everything we say with a bit of a grain of salt. But we do get a lot of 400 level papers. Like I think our section kind of gets the most articles, if I'm not incorrect. So we do see a variety.
It's probably tied between social sciences and humanities or fine arts.
Yeah.
For most papers.
For sure. Yeah, so I guess both of our sections, you kind of see a bunch of different stuff. But just because it wasn't something you wrote for a 400 level class doesn't mean it's not still relevant, because we've had people even submit assignments where they're kind of more like an assignment than an original paper themselves, and that works too, because then we're able to communicate with the author and go, oh, like this is kind of what we're expecting. And then it might help them kind of, if they want to say, oh, I have a different article that I'd like to submit, that's possible too. So yeah, I'll let Brennan fill in any of the gaps, I guess, that I missed there.
I'm going to continue the trend of saying, Courtney, you've done a great job. Most people, I guess, wouldn't know this, but Courtney does an excellent job whatever section she's in. So that covered pretty much everything I'd have to say. I would just reiterate that, yeah, we have, as of late, been getting a lot of second year courses, basically, and they've all been interesting and good papers. They need revisions like any paper did. Delane made the point that there's the only paper that's ever submitted that's published. It doesn't exist. So they're good papers. They're second year papers. I think we've had one or two first year papers, but mostly there have been some new second year papers that are all good, all interesting, from all over the place. There's been Indigenous studies, there's been psychology, there's been sociology, there's been anthropology, all across the social sciences. They're like typically done during class assignments, but they've all been good so far. So that's all I would add.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess that brings us towards the end of this round table. Any other final questions, feel free to drop in the chat. We'll stick around for just like a minute or two. Some other things I might just add for like things that are like up and coming or things to point out in the community. So we will soon be showcasing our new cover for our current issue. And usually we have a kind of like a party to launch for when this issue is completed and we're moving to the next one. So that usually happens in the winter and then in the spring. So keep an eye out because you're all invited. And that's when we just celebrate all the work that our editors and our authors have done. And yeah, probably look out for that in winter time. And other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, we also do call outs for editorial positions in the spring for the next following year. So during this next spring, that's when we're looking for the new editorial team for the following year. So if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye out for that as well. So yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Yes, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, but